Welcome to Trendy Words, the podcast about meaningless, misleading, nonsense words we use in business marketing and what we can do about them. My name is Andrew, copywriter and grammatical malcontent, and our phrase for this episode is elevate. And I'm joined today by my guest, Olga Pope. Hi, Olga.
Hi, Andrew. How are you?
I'm doing really great. It's really great to see you. So I've known Olga for years now.
Probably about 3 years.
About 3 years, yeah, it feels longer. Yes, it feels like there was other copywriters and beers and somewhere in London.
That's exactly how it started.
That's exactly how it started. So for people that maybe don't know who you are, would you maybe like to share a bit about yourself?
Yes, of course. I'm a creative director. My background is in linguistics and graphic design, but I'm genetically predisposed to writing, so I guess words found me. So that's what I specialize in. And I'm Arctic born, London trained, and currently New York based as of 2025. And I have spent most of my career in big agencies like AMV BBDO, Mother, Uncommon, and TBWA in London, and then went solo and independent. So that's what I'm doing now, but it might change again soon.
Why is elevate so stupid?
Elevate is stupid and so annoying because it manages to be both vague and wanky at the same time. It's just such a lazy word. And I think it happens when somebody says, I need to say better, but I'm afraid that somebody will think that I didn't go to uni, or I don't know, I don't have a large vocabulary, or I'm not a proper writer. And so instead of saying better or something similar, we say elevated. And I think it's the verbal equivalent of when a client looks at a really nicely designed, let's say, business card that is clean and crisp, and it's just black on white, and says, but where's the design? So I think that elevated or elevate is the verbal equivalent or copy equivalent of that.
You remind me of somebody that said something about a director that they used to work under, which I said something along the lines of, I want it to look designed, add drop shadow to the text. And I think that's probably the closest like design equivalent to.
I love that. That's exactly it. It's that. It's like how to say nothing whilst saying words. I walked past a billboard here in New York recently which said, elevate your wellness. And I thought, wow, you just said 3 words and not even short ones. Elevate is 4 syllables. Elevate is 3. And what does that mean? What is elevate your wellness? I think it was a CBD store. Oh, and do you want to guess what the visual was for that? Elevate your wellness. Or was it...
If it was a CBD store, is it going to be a marijuana leaf?
It's more tightly linked to the copy because they were really trying.
Is it a mountain?
Close, getting closer. Okay. It was somebody levitating.
Oh, of course. That's exactly what I expect when I'm taking any product involving CBT. Of course, makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and actually I looked for it today on Google and I found elevate your work life, also CBD by the way, but a different one because that word is everywhere, especially in America. And they elevate your elevate your work life featured a woman with a notebook. It was a woman with a laptop levitating above a park bench.
That sounds like probably an ad for Asana. If I had to guess, or Trello.
It could be, but this was CBD as well, because CBD stores are everywhere in America. Well, in New York, actually. Not in
New York, yeah.
Not all of America, yes.
It's not legal everywhere in the States. It's legal everywhere in Canada.
I didn't realize that. Okay, so here it is. I mean, in New York it is. Yes. And so elevated is a bit like saying premium, which is also not a great word, and without explaining how or why.
Yeah, it's meant to sound, as you said before with the design, it's sort of, it sounds like a pretty word, but it doesn't actually mean anything, at least in this context.
It's Latin, so it sounds like it's a smart big word, but it really is pretty useless. To be honest, I say I hate it and I do, but also I kind of love it because it's useful. And the reason I say it's useful and I love it is because it is such a great red flag, I'd say. Because
Mm,
when I see a brand use it, to me that says we charge a lot, but we don't spend a lot on marketing or writing. We don't pay our writers well. So we hire writers who use Elevate and Elevated, or we use good writers who don't, but we then tell them to use it because we don't understand what good writing is.
mm,
And equally, if I see somebody's portfolio, if I, let's say I'm hiring, and I see a copywriter's portfolio that uses the word elevate in the work they
mm.
chose to show, I'm not going to hire that person. I'm sorry. And also, I hope I don't alienate too many of my friends because I'm pretty sure I have at least two acquaintances or friends who use that word in their own marketing.
Mm.
But maybe they won't listen to this. Who knows?
It sort of speaks to a problem of the business is trying to make a promise that things will be better, but is essentially not either unable or unwilling to define what that better is.
Exactly. And better itself is not a great word because it also is overused and quite vague. But at least it's a simple word of just two syllables, whereas elevated is four, and it's like better with a side of wank.
Yes, because it's has a an interesting phenomenon in linguistics, and you probably know this probably even better than I do about how in modern English, particularly in British English, we tend to talk when we want to sound fancy. We often tend to lean on words that are originally derived from French or Latin. And when we talk about common everyday words, they more often than not have a linguistic origin in Germanic languages.
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah. So we talk about elevation instead of what would the try to think of what the Germanic high? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 Or
Yeah. Good.
up, the word up,
Word up. Yeah. There we go.
like up your game instead of elevate your game.
Yes. Or speak instead of articulate, or
Wow.
and
Yes,
things
I
like that.
haven't.
Yes. Yeah.
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 It's funny. It's funny. I can even imagine the tone it goes with, when you read it out loud. If you imagine it being an advert, you know exactly what that sounds like.
Mhm.
It's going to be elevate, isn't
Yes.
it?
It's that soft voice from those ridiculous Bentley commercials where it's the woman tapping on the steering wheel and just going Bentley.
I
And
need to
it's
see
just
that. I haven't seen those. I was thinking
oh
about M&S. This is not just food. This
yes,
is
this
M&S
M&S
food.
food. Yes, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, the Bentley one is one that gets roundly mocked online because it's so just over the top. It's like it's very memeable.
You'll have to show me that.
Yeah, okay. All right. We'll do that during the break. But yes. So where do you find that most often that agencies and clients stumble on this? Like, what do you find is the like how when you note that it's a red flag? How do you maybe begin to sort of call out the fact that that is a problem?
If I understand the question correctly, I think there are categories where this word appears more often than not, and that's usually things like lifestyle, sometimes travel, which I guess is a similar thing, things like wellness, so makeup, cosmetics, wellness, travel, those types of things. And I wouldn't say I see it so much in big agencies, at least that maybe it wasn't such a trendy word back when I was at AMV BBDO, but I see it in the wild all the time, both online and offline, and it drives me nuts.
Mm. I'd say that like elevate and things like it or like enhance or improve or all kind of they're all things that in the B2B work that I tend to do is usually based around productivity software, which is why my guesses immediately think of like that's probably an Asana ad because it is kind of the vague, relatively undefined nature of software that's supposed to help you organize things. But most of the companies aren't specific enough about exactly how clients do because their platforms are sort of uh, open forums for every single client and they don't have a narrowly defined use case.
Yes, I see what you mean and why that would happen. I think I mainly see it in the wild, not used by tech companies, but in America they really do love those words like enhance and elevate. They just really love big words. I'm not sure what it is. I see it more often now than in the UK. Maybe I should move back.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, for me, having, I guess, sort of worked on both sides, much like yourself, I find that, like, yeah, it's about equal. The only thing I would say is that usually when a word catches on in terms of popularity or being in vogue in marketing, I noticed that North American firms, so both Canadian and Americans, tend to all bandwagon themselves much more readily than British and European clients do, who maybe they don't leap on the latest word quite as rapidly.
Yes, I think you're right. And that's how you end up with 15 different billboards for 15 brands using the same, not even just the same word, but the same phrase, like elevate your game. I think I found at least 25 examples on the first Google results page.
Yeah, and that also kind of like it very much kills differentiation because it means that if I strip the brand colors and the logo away and swap the names around, you'd never be able to tell any of the products apart
Precisely. It's
based on
just
their messaging.
exactly. It's just people see it and they don't see it at all. So if I try to remember now, the last 10 times I've seen it in the wild, I probably won't because I you just walk past it. You see words, you see some kind of shapes, but you don't remember that. You don't even remember what the brand was because it says nothing. It's a waste of breath. It's a waste of pixels and ink.
And it doesn't make you memorable. There's no lasting impact upon from the message.
No, it's just lazy and well, obviously we see the world slightly differently being in marketing, but I'm pretty sure that, you know, muggles don't exactly think, wow, they promised to elevate my wellness. Well, this has to be good.
Yeah, and I think that that also sort of really nails on the other problem that using this language does is it's not actually language that people use in everyday life. Nobody wakes up in the morning and thinking like I'm going to elevate my productivity today as they get up and have their first cup of coffee. Nobody does that.
You're so right about this. This word doesn't pass the one of the best tests for writing that I usually tell people about, which is read your stuff out loud. And if it doesn't sound like something you would ever say to a friend, just cut it out, just change it. And I don't think anybody has ever said the word elevate to me, outside of the context of mocking it. In fact, a colleague of mine at my last agency had this Google Slides deck, which was called which was called Olga's Most Hated. And that was a collection of words and phrases that she knew I absolutely despised. That
Oh,
would make my skin crawl. And I realized later that I was actually, it wasn't wise of me to contribute and to tell her those words because I was giving the whole agency some heavy weapons against me that I could use anytime. And every word was in she chose a horrible font for each word, different fonts,
mm,
typefaces, I should say, and also the most horrible color combos too. And so I think Elevate was on page two.
yeah, I can believe that. This is why we end up working for ourselves.
Pretty
And then,
much,
then,
yes.
then that becomes LinkedIn content, being like, if you have a problem with any of these words, then you need to move along. You're not my client. Yeah.
I've been lucky because none of my clients have ever used that or asked for it, luckily.
Yeah. Well, I think at this point, then they already know well ahead of hiring you that like they need to get away from that way of speaking.
I think the word bullshit on my website, which I'm pretty sure is somewhere at the top, I think that filters out the wrong people.
All right, we had a quick break. I've shown Olga the Bentley ASMR ad, so that's now a known thing. We would also like to issue a correction. Olga's website does, in fact, say "what the fuck" and not "bullshit," as we previously talked about in the first half of the podcast.
Luckily, that also works to filter out the wrong crowd. I
Yeah,
think I say it 3 times on the front on the homepage.
right. I will make a point of linking this in the show notes so that everyone else can look at. I think it's a great website. I think you've done a lot of really creative things with that, And it's rare to see, especially copywriter portfolio websites that are that interesting to look at.
Thank you, thank you. I think that's to do with my degree in design, although I'm not super happy with how it looks, but it must be that.
Mm-hmm. So, one of the things that we sort of talked about both on and off recording was before talking about in English when we want to use fancy words, how we tend to lean on things that are French and Latin rooted. And I figured like starting off about like addressing the issue of use of elevate and words like it comes from a realization that often people's higher education has taught them that they should be using these longer and more complex words because that served you really well in academia and in other areas of business, but in marketing tends to work against you.
Exactly. And maybe that's why most copywriters I know, the good ones, are actually not university educated, or rather they studied something like marine biology and not English.
I studied politics. I had to unlearn that. The first 2 years of copywriting was unlearning all of they weren't really bad habits at the time, but they became bad habits once I got into this line of work of having to realize that you can't get away with use that same language that worked really well for you in university and expect that to work really well in the world of business.
Well, exactly, unless your audience is professors for the
Yeah,
brand that you're working with.
yeah, and I don't actually know any copywriters that work in academia.
No, same here. And also, I think professors in their private lives don't need to see those words all the time either.
Yeah, well, and there's an award out there for I think writing the most overly like unnecessarily verbose sentences in academia. Um,
I need to
yeah,
check that out.
yeah. But it really speaks to like even academia realizes that I think to an extent that people realize that using overly complex language mostly works to alienate people, which is works against marketing. In marketing, we don't alienate, we want to include, we want to draw in people rather than drive them away most of the time.
Most of the time we do, yes. Except when we want to do what I do with my own
Yeah.
copy.
If you
Alienate
yeah,
the people I don't want to work with who would
yeah.
not like working with me.
If what the fuck bothers you, Olga is not the copywriter for you.
No, she fucking isn't.
When it comes to working with clients then in terms of helping them sort of rethink their mindset about their messaging, where do you begin?
I think if the client is asking for, is asking you to elevate your copy and to include that word, I think the first thing I do is to show them just Google that word, Google something like elevate your in quotation marks, and show them the image results or just any results and see how many billboards, how many ads there are with the same slogans that mean nothing, and just explain to them that you really are wasting your ad space because people will not remember you, will not know how you're different, will not understand what the benefit is because you're not telling them how you're better or why you're better.
Mm,
You're just saying, it's going to be, I don't know, a better experience than normal.
yeah,
And by the way, the word experience itself is also, if you say elevate your experience, that's just nothing says creative bankruptcy like
yeah.
elevated experience.
It means that you don't really know why well, amongst other things, and this is the thing that I find in my work, is that it speaks to the company not understanding what the customer likes about them, which is a wild thing to think about, being like, surely one of the first things that you should find out when you come into any kind of business success is figuring out, well, why do people like working with me?
Yes, I think it happens when there is no strategy in place, or when people are just lazy and don't understand how it works and don't want to understand how it works, which I think a business should at least try to do. Here I'm talking about smaller businesses, I guess,
Mm,
who don't have a CMO, for instance. So I think once you've explained that it really is a waste of ink, pixels, money, etc., you start to explain what you could say instead. And the main thing you want to do really is give them some concrete reasons or emotions, or basically just say something that says something, which elevate, as we've established, does not. For instance, if we're talking about elevating your wellness, what would be a different way of saying that thing that they're trying to say? What are they actually trying to say by saying elevate your wellness? Is it about spending more me time? Is it about spending more money on your me time? Is it about using better ingredients? Why should they do that? What happens when they do that? Or what happens if they don't? What happens if your audience sticks with their current mediocre wellness routines? So that's where you start to unravel what you're actually trying to say, why people should go into the store or buy your product. And that's a much more fruitful territory for what you could be saying instead of elevate your bloody wellness.
We started with a discussion about CBT products. And to be honest, the first thing that popped into my head, because I've known a few people that take them, they're really good for apparently dealing with headaches and migraines, which seems like a much more viscerally emotional experience than elevating your wellness.
Yes, and if your ad appears somewhere that's more targeted, you could do that. So if you just decide to target people who suffer from headaches and migraines, you could do that. If you're just doing it for kind of lifestyle, general wellness, again, I don't like the word wellness much, but let's use it as shorthand for now. I think there are much more interesting territories to go to rather than talking about elevating your wellness. And sometimes, by the way, if it's a visual thing, if it's a billboard, sometimes you don't need words at all, or you don't need those words. And you definitely don't need to say and show it at the same time, like the levitating girl with a laptop in the park.
Mm. Yeah, it's sometimes a more powerful image or a more useful image, if it's done well, means that the actual need for actual copy is minimal.
Precisely. So if we look at something like Uncommon's work for British Airways, I'm talking specifically about, I think it was 2024, it was the business class billboards that they did, which show that you get a private pod. They were just really nice visuals. The visuals were, dare I say, elevated? I do not dare say that. But the visuals were very nicely done. They were not cheap at all. They did not look cheap. And the copy was playful and fun. There were quite a few phrases there. I think it was something like, here when you need us, just over there when you don't.
Mm-hmm.
And they could have said, elevate your flight experience, which would not have done what they actually did. And so they did the elevated part, the premium part, through the way they did the visuals. And then they could spend their words on something that actually has meaning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you know that like the moment that you think like elevate your experience is totally something that a highly corporatized airline marketing department is something that you could see them doing, um, at
If
least
they
in our
don't have
line
a
of
good
work. Yeah,
if they don't have a good agency, yes, it could
yeah,
happen. But I don't usually see those big brands do that, probably because they do have CMOs who know their stuff and who
mm,
do hire better agencies.
yeah, and know a little bit better. Well, I noticed that this also speaks to I think the current trending ads that British Airways does of the logo reflected in the engine nacelle, which, as far as I could tell, none of those ads actually have any major use of copy at all. They're meant to use all visual.
Exactly, yes. And there was also one more that showed the windows, right? I think that was 2 years ago.
Yeah,
Just people flying over the city.
yeah, and it's sort of like when it's that well done and that well composed, you don't really need to say anything. Um,
Exactly.
yeah.
Fewer words. Can't believe that copyright is saying that. Don't use words.
I feel like that's always a surprising thing when you're dealing with people that have never worked with a copywriter for the first time. The fact that so much of the time we are championing fewer words, not more.
Well, it's the same thing we're talking about, right? Don't use so many syllables. You don't need 4 syllables if you can use two for the same with the same effect. Don't say elevated when you can say better. Shorter words, fewer words, and sometimes no words at all.
Yeah. And where possible, talk to real experiences rather than something amorphous or undefined. Like elevating your wellness is so doesn't have any real ties to actual reality. Whereas if you'd said been like the best cure for a head for that pain in your head, that has so much more sort of potential in terms of speaking to a real experience of your customer.
Exactly. So I would pick either a specific benefit or a problem you're solving, and I would go into detail, and I mean colorful detail about what they're really getting. And that could be visual, could be verbal. Let's say we're talking about elevating your, I don't know, your flight experience. Again, you're flying better, fly better instead of elevate your flying experience. But again, fly better might be a sign off, it might be a tagline, not the headline. Let's say we are showing, this is just me brainstorming out loud live. Let's say we show really nicely done breakfast, a flight in-flight breakfast, which is not usually glamorous, but this one is. So it looks absolutely stunning, and it looks like it's in a private pod, and it's nicely shot. And let's say the line says something like, all of this, all to yourself, or something like this. This is just, this is a bit crap. But that says more in in shorter words
Yep.
than if you had that image and elevate your flying experience.
Because it gets right to the heart of what it is actually like to fly. Is it business class with British Airways?
Yeah,
Yeah. Um,
exactly. And it creates some sort of an emotion, and also it doesn't alienate because it doesn't use those words. Fun fact, there is a billboard, or there was a billboard at my favorite airport, which is London City Airport, which actually says, fly away from the hoi polloi, which I just find shocking, but that's what it says. Anyway, even the hoi polloi will not be put off by you saying all of this all to yourself, because they
mm,
are short, simple words we all know.
right. Although I don't think I've seen hoi polloi used in copy in living memory, but that might
That
be
was the
just
only
me.
time. That was the
Yeah.
only time I've seen it. I was shocked. I
Yeah.
thought it
That
was so.
that is really surprising.
It's quite rude, I think.
Yeah. So, and then one other thing, I guess, to maybe get into on that, because one of the things that we often cope with as creatives is that when you want to focus in on a singular experience, the really common pushback is that like, but what about this or the five or six other use cases that the company knows about internally, and that they're terribly worried about if they focus on one, people will forget about the other five.
Well, then we need a tagline. But again, I would say that using elevate in a tagline is even worse.
Because it doesn't really speak to any of those use cases.
Well, no, because it just, as we've established, it says nothing at all.
Mm,
It's just clutter.
yeah. And then better, so the task then is to really try to find something much more specific that actually sort of captures the energy of what you're trying to do, and not worry so much about, oh, do we have all our bases covered.
Precisely, yes. You want to find something that ties together the overall benefit or experience or whatever it is you're selling. And I think the problem here is actually a slightly different problem, a much bigger one. We are running out of words. This is legit. This is happening. So many words and word combos have been used and used well, and they're famous enough that you can't do it again. If you came up with something like just make it, people would instantly say, oh, yeah, you're just trying to be Nike. And so we don't really have an abundance of, why did I use the word abundance? It's too long, right? We don't have too
Mm.
many of those good, short, simple words that have not been put together by some writer somewhere and used by a brand. So we do have to come up with new ways of saying things while still using simple words. Sometimes we use broken grammar. Find your better was the tagline for, I think, a real estate website in the UK.
Mm.
Rightmove it was, right? Rightmove said
Mm.
find your
Yeah.
better. So technically not correct grammar, but it worked. And so, yes, that we're running out of words is a real problem, but elevate is not the solution.
Olga, if people wanted to get in touch with you and find out more about you, where do they go?
They could go to olgapope.com. Is that right? Yes, it is.
Yep, I
And
think so.
they could find me on LinkedIn if they so wish. I think I use the word bullshit on LinkedIn and what the fuck on my website. So either way, if you're a If you're offended by that, I'm sorry. I'm not really, but I'm sorry, but we probably won't work together.
Mm, cool. Well, thank you very much, Olga. And
Thank you for
thank you.
having me.
Oh, no worries. And thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, I would really appreciate it if you gave a like, a subscribe, or a comment, just to let me know what you liked or didn't like about this episode. If you feel particularly motivated, you can contact me on LinkedIn at agmonroe, and or you can send me an email at andrew@andrewmonroe.com. See you in the next episode. Bye.